The warning lights flashed red across the massive Galactic Council chamber. Emergency alarms filled the air with their sharp, urgent sounds. Representatives from dozens of alien species rushed between their seats, their voices mixing together. In panic and fear, Admiral Hana Kim stood perfectly still in the center of all this chaos. She watched the huge holographic display that showed the outer edge of the galaxy. Red dots moved across the star map like a spreading disease. Each red dot was an enemy warship. There were thousands of them. "Admiral Kim, you need to see this," called Ambassador Juwon Park. He was the human representative to the Galactic Council. His face was pale as he handed her a data tablet. "The Vorthak Empire sent us a message. It's not good news." Hana took the tablet and read the message. Her expression did not change, but her dark eyes grew colder. The message was simple and direct. The Vorthak Empire demanded complete surrender of all human colonies. They wanted humanity to become their slaves. They gave Earth 72 hours to decide. "What happens if we refuse?" asked Ambassador Park, though he already knew the answer. "They kill everyone," Hana said simply. "Every human in the galaxy dies. They have done this to 17 other species already." Around them, the alien representatives continued their panicked discussions. The Aquari delegate waved his tentacles wildly as he spoke into his breathing mask. The crystalline Zalites made high-pitched sounds that hurt human ears. The gas-dwelling Nephians floated in their protective suits, their voices echoing strangely. "The Vorthak have never been defeated," said Commander Volth, an Aquari military leader. His voice bubbled through his water-filled helmet. "They are the strongest military force the galaxy has ever seen. Their warriors are bred only for war. They know nothing but fighting and killing. Their technology is far beyond most species," added crystalline leader Zenth. Her voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "Their warships are the size of small moons. Their weapons can crack planets in half. No one has ever stopped them when they decide to attack." Hana listened to all of this without showing any emotion. She had read the same reports. She knew the numbers. 3,000 Vorthak warships against 200 human vessels. The enemy had better technology, more experience, and 15 times more ships. On paper, humanity should surrender immediately. "Admiral," said the Nephian representative, its voice floating from somewhere inside its gas-filled suit. "Perhaps your species should consider the surrender terms. The Vorthak usually allows some survivors to serve as workers. It is better than complete extinction." The chamber fell silent. Every alien eye turned to look at Admiral Hana Kim. She was not a large woman. She stood barely 5 feet tall, with short black hair and calm, dark eyes. She looked almost fragile compared to the massive alien beings around her. But there was something in her stillness that made them all wait for her response. Hana walked slowly to the main display. The red dots showing the Vorthak fleet seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. She studied the enemy formation for a long moment. Then she turned back to face the assembled representatives. "Tell me something," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the large chamber. "Have any of you ever wondered why humans have never lost a war once we truly committed to fighting it?" The aliens looked at each other with confusion. Humanity had only been part of galactic civilization for about 200 years. Most species considered them newcomers, barely worth noticing in the grand scale of galactic politics. "Admiral Kim," said Commander Volth carefully, "with all respect to your species, humans are still very new to space warfare. The Vorthak Empire has been conquering worlds for over 1,000 years. They have destroyed civilizations that existed long before. Earth even knew other planets had life. You are brave to want to fight," added Leader Zenth. "But bravery alone cannot overcome such overwhelming force. The mathematics are simple. They have more ships, bigger weapons, and greater experience. Logic suggests that resistance will only lead to unnecessary suffering." Hana nodded slowly. as if she agreed completely with everything they said. "You are absolutely right," she told them. "Looking at the numbers, we should lose quickly and completely. Any rational analysis says we have no chance at all." She paused and looked around the chamber. Every representative leaned forward slightly, waiting for her to announce humanity's surrender. "But here is something you might not understand about humans," Hannah continued. "You are all thinking like civilized beings. You think about acceptable losses, strategic objectives, and reasonable outcomes. You fight wars to gain territory or resources or political advantage." The Admiral's voice grew quieter, but somehow it seemed to fill the entire chamber. "We humans remember what we were like before we became civilized. And when our survival is truly threatened, when someone tries to extinct our entire species, we stop thinking like civilized beings." Ambassador Park felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard rumors about something called Protocol 7, but no human official had ever explained what it meant. Looking at Admiral Kim now, he was not sure he wanted to know. "What are you saying, Admiral?" asked the Nephian representative. Hannah Kim turned back to look at the display showing the approaching enemy fleet. For the first time since the crisis began, she smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret that would change everything. "I am saying that the Vorthak Empire is about to learn the difference between a species that fights to win and a species that fights to ensure their enemy can never threaten anyone ever again." The chamber fell completely silent. Even the emergency alarms seemed quieter now. Every alien representative stared at the small human woman who stood before the display of 3,000 enemy warships with that strange, cold smile. 72 hours, Hannah said, more to herself than to anyone else. "That should be just enough time." "Enough time for what?" whispered Ambassador Park. Admiral Hannah Kim's smile grew wider, and somehow that made it even more frightening. "Enough time to show the galaxy what humans call total war." Captain Minho Choi stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, humanity's largest warship. Around him, his senior officers studied the tactical displays with grim faces. The numbers were worse than anyone had hoped. The Vorthak fleet was not just big. It was massive beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Captain," said Commander Soman Lee, his tactical officer. She had served with him for 8 years and had never looked this worried. "The intelligence reports are confirmed. The Vorthak brought everything they have. This is not just an invasion force. This is an extinction fleet." Minho nodded slowly. He had read the same reports. 3,000 warships, each one capable of destroying entire cities with a single shot. The Vorthak had not come to conquer human worlds. They had come to erase humanity from existence. "Sir," called Lieutenant Yuna Han from her station. She was the youngest officer on the bridge, barely 25 years old, but she had one of the sharpest minds in the fleet. "I have been studying the Vorthak military history. There is something important you need to know." "Show me," Minho said. Yuna activated the main display. Images of destroyed worlds filled the screen. Planets that had once been home to billions of living beings now looked like burned rocks floating in space. Cities that had taken centuries to build were nothing but glass craters. The Vorthak have conquered 17 different species in the past 50 years, Yuna explained. But conquered is not the right word. They completely destroyed every single one. No survivors, no prisoners, no mercy. When they decide a species is a threat, they eliminate it completely. The bridge crew was silent as they looked at the images. These were not military targets. These were homes, schools, hospitals. The Vorthak did not care about the difference between soldiers and civilians. They killed everyone. "Lieutenant," said Commander Lee, "what makes them so effective? How do they win every time?" Yuna highlighted different sections of the data. Every species they fought tried to defend their homeworlds. They built defensive lines, protected their most important planets, and tried to minimize their losses. They fought like civilized beings with rules and limits. She paused and looked around the bridge. But the Vorthak do not follow any rules. They do not care about military targets or strategic objectives. They just kill everything until nothing is left alive. Communications Officer Dongwoo Kim suddenly straightened at his station. Captain, we are receiving a priority message from Admiral Kim. All fleet commanders are ordered to prepare their crews for Protocol 7. The bridge fell completely silent. Every officer turned to look at Captain Minho. Protocol 7 was something they had all heard rumors about, but none of them had ever seen the actual orders. It was not even in the regular military database. "Sir," whispered Commander Lee, "what exactly is Protocol 7? Minho was quiet for a long moment. He had been briefed on Protocol 7 2 years ago, but he had hoped he would never need to use that knowledge. It was not really a battle plan. It was something much more dangerous. Protocol 7, he said slowly, is what we do when someone tries to kill every human in the galaxy. It is not about winning a war. It is about making sure our enemy can never threaten anyone ever again." Lieutenant Han looked confused. "But sir, how is that different from normal warfare?" "Because," said another voice from the bridge entrance, "normal warfare has limits." Everyone turned to see Admiral Hana Kim walking onto the bridge. She moved with calm confidence, as if the approaching enemy fleet was nothing more than a training exercise. "Admiral," Captain Minho said, standing up from his command chair, "what are your orders?" Hana walked to the main display and studied the enemy formation. "Captain, I want you to remember something about human history. For most of our existence on Earth, we were not the strongest species on our planet. We were not the fastest or the biggest or the most dangerous." She turned to face the bridge crew. "But we became the most successful species on Earth because we learned something that other animals never did. When something threatens our survival, we do not just fight back. We make sure it can never threaten us again." "Ma'am," said Commander Lee carefully, "the other species in the galaxy think we are too new to space warfare. They think we do not understand how these things work." Admiral Kim smiled the same cold smile she had shown in the council chambers. "They are right about one thing. We do not understand how galactic warfare works. We only understand how human warfare works, and there is a very big difference." She activated her personal communicator. "All ships, this is Admiral Kim. In 36 hours, the Vorthak fleet will arrive at the edge of our solar system. They expect to find a small, frightened human fleet trying desperately to protect Earth." The communication channel carried her voice to every human ship in the system. 200 vessels, from massive dreadnoughts to small fighter squadrons, all listened to their commander. "They are wrong," Admiral Kim continued. "They are not going to find a defensive fleet trying to protect our homeworld. They are going to find something the galaxy has never seen before. They are going to find humans who have decided that mercy is a luxury we cannot afford." Captain Minho felt a chill as he listened to the Admiral's words. Around him, his officers looked both scared and determined. They were beginning to understand that they were not just fighting for Earth. They were fighting to teach the galaxy a lesson about what happened when someone tried to extinct humanity. "Protocol 7 is now active," Admiral Kim announced. "All ships will receive their specific orders within the hour. Remember, we are not here to win a battle. We are here to win a war that will never need to be fought again." The communication ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Everyone knew that in 36 hours, everything would change. The question was whether the galaxy would still recognize humanity when it was over. Lieutenant Han spoke quietly. "Sir, what exactly are we about to become?" Captain Minho looked at the display showing the approaching enemy fleet. "Something the Vorthak are going to wish they had never met." The Vorthak invasion fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system like a plague of metal locusts. 3,000 massive warships spread across space in perfect military formation. Each ship was bigger than anything humanity had ever built. Their weapons could turn moons into dust. War Master Gorthak stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the World Killer. He was 7 feet tall, covered in thick scales, and had spent his entire life learning how to destroy other species. Behind him, dozens of Vorthak officers monitored the invasion fleet's progress. "Report," Gorthak ordered in his deep, rumbling voice. "War Master," said his tactical officer, "we have detected the human defensive fleet, approximately 200 vessels positioned around their primary world. Most appear to be light cruisers and destroyers, nothing larger than our smallest escort ships." Gorthak studied the tactical display. The human ships looked pathetically small compared to his massive dreadnoughts. 200 ships against 3,000. It was not even a fair fight. "War Master," continued the tactical officer, "the humans have arranged their fleet in standard defensive positions around key orbital facilities. They appear to be attempting a final stand to protect their homeworld." The other Vorthak officers clicked their claws in what passed for laughter among their species. They had seen this same pattern 17 times before. Every species tried. The same hopeless defense when facing extinction. "War Master," said his communications officer, "we are receiving a transmission from the human fleet commander. Should we acknowledge it?" "Put it through," Gorthak rumbled. "Let us hear what these humans have to say before we destroy them." The main display flickered and showed the image of a small human female. She wore a simple military uniform and stood calmly on what appeared to be a starship bridge. Her dark eyes looked directly at Gorthak without any sign of fear. "I am Admiral Hana Kim, commander of the Human Defense Fleet," she said in a steady voice. "You must be War Master Gorthak." "I am," Gorthak replied. "Human Admiral, you have received our terms. Your species has one final opportunity to surrender and serve the Vorthak Empire. Refuse, and we will demonstrate why the galaxy fears our name." Admiral Kim nodded as if she completely understood. "War Master, before you begin your attack, I want to explain something that might save both our species a great deal of trouble." Gorthak's officers looked at each other with confusion. What could this tiny human possibly tell them about warfare? "Speak," Gorthak said. "In human history," Admiral Kim began, "we have a saying. When a human smiles before a battle, it does not mean we are happy. It means we have already won, and we are deciding how much mercy to show." The Vorthak bridge crew fell silent. They studied the human admiral's face carefully. She did not look frightened or desperate. She looked completely calm, as if she knew something they did not. "Human," Gorthak said slowly, "you have 200 small ships. We have 3,000 dreadnoughts. Your weapons are primitive compared to ours. Your technology is centuries behind ours. What could you possibly know that we do not?" Admiral Kim was quiet for a moment. Then, for the first time since the transmission began, she smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator that had been waiting patiently for its prey to walk into a trap. "We know that you have never fought humans before," she said. The transmission ended, leaving the Vorthak bridge in confused silence. Gorthak stared at the blank screen, trying to understand what the human admiral had meant. What difference did it make what species they fought? War was war. The strongest force always won. "War Master," said his sensor officer, "something strange is happening. All our long-range sensors just went offline." "What do you mean, offline?" "Sir, they are not damaged or jammed. They simply stopped working. It is as if space itself has become invisible beyond a few thousand kilometers from our ships." Gorthak felt the first touch of unease. In all his years of warfare, he had never encountered anything like this. "Can we still see the human fleet?" "Yes, sir. Short-range sensors show them in the same defensive positions around their planet. Then we proceed as planned. All ships begin the attack. Target their orbital defenses first, then move to planetary bombardment positions. The Vorthak fleet began to advance toward Earth in their standard attack formation. But something was wrong. As they moved deeper into the solar system, more of their equipment began to malfunction. Not broken, just mysteriously offline. War Master, his communications officer, reported, "We have lost contact with our reserve fleets. All hyperspace communication systems are not responding. Navigation is also compromised," added another officer. "We cannot calculate jump coordinates. It is as if the mathematical constants of space have been changed." Gorthak gripped the command rail with his clawed hands. This was impossible. Technology did not simply stop working for no reason. There had to be an explanation. "Sir," called his tactical officer urgently. "New contacts detected. Multiple ships appearing directly inside our formation." The main display shifted to show the battlefield. Gorthak's massive dreadnoughts were spread across thousands of kilometers of space in perfect military order. But now, scattered throughout the formation, were smaller human vessels. Not approaching from outside, but already there, as if they had been hiding in empty space. "How many?" Gorthak demanded. "Unknown, sir. Every time we count them, more appear. They are not following any logical approach pattern. Some are above us, some below, some appear to be occupying the same coordinates as empty space." War Master Gorthak realized that Admiral Kim had not been boasting. She had been warning him. The humans were not fighting a defensive battle. They had somehow moved their entire fleet inside his formation without being detected. "All ships," he ordered, "engage any human vessel within firing range. Show them what Vorthak weapons can do." But as his fleet opened fire, Gorthak began to understand that this battle was not going to be like any other he had fought. The humans were not trying to protect anything. They were not following any rules of civilized warfare. They were hunting. "War Master," his communications officer said, his voice shaking, "we are receiving another transmission from the human admiral." "Put it through." Admiral Kim appeared on the screen again. Behind her, Gorthak could see human officers working calmly at their stations. There was no panic, no fear, just quiet efficiency. "War Master," she said, "you are probably wondering how we moved our entire fleet inside your formation without you detecting us." Gorthak said nothing, but his eyes demanded an answer. "We have been preparing for this moment for 6 months. Admiral," Kim explained, "while you were gathering your invasion fleet, we were building something you have never seen before. We call it the Quantum Disruption Network." The display behind her showed a technical diagram that meant nothing to Gorthak, but the implications were becoming clear. You are now fighting inside a pocket of space where your faster-than-light technology does not work. Your sensors cannot see beyond your own hulls, your communications cannot reach your other fleets, and your navigation systems cannot calculate an escape route. Admiral Kim's smile grew wider, and somehow that made it more terrifying. "Welcome to human warfare, War Master. We hope you find it educational." The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It was not really a battle at all. It was a lesson in what happened when humans decided to stop being civilized. Captain Min-Ho Choi watched from the bridge of the Indomitable as his ship moved through the Vorthak formation like a ghost. The enemy dreadnoughts fired wildly in all directions, but they could not target what they could not see. Human ships appeared and disappeared around them, striking with perfect precision, and then vanishing back into the darkness. "Captain," reported Commander Soman Lee, "we have successfully disabled the weapon systems on 3 enemy vessels. No casualties on either side." "Good," Min-Ho replied. "Remember the objectives. We are not here to kill them. We are here to teach them." This was the part of Protocol 7 that the galaxy would never understand. Humans could have destroyed the entire Vorthak fleet in the first 10 minutes of the engagement. Their weapons were more advanced than anyone realized. Their tactics were beyond anything other species could imagine, and they had complete control of the battlefield. But they chose not to. Lieutenant Yuna Han looked up from her tactical station. Sir, I am receiving target assignments from Fleet Command. We are ordered to disable their communication systems, life support, and escape pods, in that order. Commander Lee frowned. Not their weapons first? No, ma'am. Admiral Kim wants them. To be able to fight back, but unable to call for help or run away. The cruel genius of this strategy became clear to everyone on the bridge. The Vorthak warriors would remain dangerous, but they would be completely alone, cut off from their empire, trapped in a solar system they could not escape, facing an enemy that seemed to control space itself. Across the battlefield, War Master Gorthak was beginning to understand the true horror of his situation. His massive fleet, the pride of the Vorthak Empire, was being systematically dismantled by an enemy he could barely see. "Report," he demanded. "Sir," his tactical officer replied, his voice shaking. "We have lost communications with 60% of our ships. The humans are targeting our relay systems first. We can see our own vessels being disabled, but we cannot coordinate any response." "What about our weapons?" "Still functional on most ships, sir, but we cannot target the enemy effectively. They appear and disappear too quickly for our targeting computers." Gorthak studied the tactical display. Red indicators showed damaged and disabled ships throughout his formation. The humans were not destroying anything. They were systematically removing his fleet's ability to function as a military force. "War Master," his communications officer called out, "we are receiving another transmission from the human admiral. She is broadcasting on all frequencies to every ship in the fleet. Put it through to all ships. I want every Vorthak warrior to hear this." Admiral Hana Kim appeared on screens throughout the Vorthak fleet. Thousands of enemy warriors looked at the small human woman who was somehow defeating their mighty armada. "War Master Gorthak," she began, "by now you understand that you cannot win this engagement. Your sensors are useless, your communications are failing, and your ships are surrounded by an enemy you cannot effectively fight." She paused, letting her words reach every Vorthak vessel. "But I want you to understand something more important than your tactical situation. This is not revenge. This is not even anger. This is education." Gorthak felt his blood grow cold as the human admiral continued. "Your empire sent you here to extinct the human race. So we are going to teach you what extinction actually looks like when humans decide to deliver it, but we are going to do it slowly, so you understand every step of the process." The transmission showed a new display behind Admiral Kim. It was a real-time view of the battle, showing human ships moving through the Vorthak formation like deadly phantoms. "Your fleet will be completely disabled, not destroyed. Your crews will be captured alive, not killed. Your ships will be towed back to your empire as a message. And that message is very simple." Admiral Kim's expression grew completely serious. "Humanity does not make threats. We make promises. And our promise to your empire is this: leave human space alone, and this is the last time we will be gentle with you." The word gentle hit every Vorthak warrior like a physical blow. This systematic dismantling of their fleet was the humans being gentle. "But if you return," Admiral Kim continued, "if you send another fleet, if you threaten even one, human life, we will show you what we do when we stop being patient." The transmission ended, leaving 3,000 ships full of Vorthak warriors in stunned silence. They had come here expecting to fight desperate defenders. Instead, they had found an enemy that could destroy them completely but chose to spare them as a lesson. Lieutenant Commander Yunbi Seo led her squadron of fighters through the enemy formation, precisely targeting escape pods and life support systems. Her orders were specific: disable, do not destroy; capture, do not kill. "Squadron leader," one of her pilots reported, "the enemy fighters are not even trying to engage us effectively. They seem confused by our tactics. That is because they have never fought an enemy that was not trying to destroy them," Yunbi replied. "They do not know how to respond to someone who is choosing to show mercy." But the mercy came with a price. Every disabled ship, every captured crew member, every demonstration of human superiority was a message being sent to the Vorthak Empire. The message was clear. Humanity could have killed them all, but chose not to. The question was whether the HFY Empire would understand the warning. Back on the World Killer, War Master Gorthak made a decision that would change galactic history. Instead of continuing to fight a hopeless battle, he opened a communication channel to Admiral Kim. "Human Admiral," he said, "I request to speak with you directly." "I am listening, War Master. My fleet is defeated. We understand this. But I must ask you a question that will determine the fate of both our species." "Ask." Gorthak looked directly into the communication screen. "You could destroy us completely. Your technology, your tactics, your control of this battlefield. You could kill every warrior in my fleet, and there is nothing we could do to stop you. Why do you choose to spare us?" Admiral Kim was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of human history. "Because, War Master, we want your empire to understand the difference between cannot and will not. Today you learned that humanity will not extinct your species, but you also learned that we can, any time we choose to do so." The implications of her words settled over Gorthak like a death sentence. "You are sending us back as a warning. We are sending you back as teachers. You will explain to your empire and to every other species that might have similar ideas that humans operate by different rules. We do not fight wars to gain territory or resources. When we fight, it is to ensure our children never have to fight the same war again." War Master Gorthak, veteran of a dozen genocidal campaigns, felt fear for the first time in his adult life. Not fear of death, but fear of what humanity might become if they were ever truly threatened again. "What guarantee do we have that you will honor this mercy?" he asked. Admiral Kim smiled that same cold smile. "You have the guarantee that we are giving you this chance at all. Remember it well, War Master. You will not get another one." 3 hours after the engagement began, it was over. The entire Vorthak invasion fleet sat powerless in space like broken toys scattered across a child's room. Not a single ship had been destroyed. Not a single warrior had been killed. But every vessel was completely disabled, their crews alive but thoroughly defeated. Captain Minho Choi stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the final stages of the operation. Human boarding parties moved methodically from ship to ship, securing weapons and taking prisoners. It was all done with the same calm efficiency they had shown during the battle itself. "Captain," reported Commander Soman Lee, "all enemy vessels have been secured. Total casualties, 0 on our side, 0 on theirs. All Vorthak crew members are alive and unharmed." "And their ships?" "Completely disabled but structurally intact. Engineering estimates we can have them ready for the journey. Home within 48 hours. Minho nodded. That was the other part of Protocol 7 that the galaxy would find impossible to understand. Humanity was not just sparing their enemies. They were going to fix their ships and send them home to tell the story. "Lieutenant Yuna." Han looked up from her station. "Sir, Admiral Kim is requesting all senior officers report to the Vorthak flagship for the formal surrender ceremony." An hour later, Captain Minho found himself in the command center of the World Killer, the massive Vorthak dreadnought that had led the invasion. The ship was huge beyond anything humans had ever built. Its corridors were wide enough for tanks to drive through. Its command center could have held a football field, but now it felt like a tomb. Vorthak warriors sat at their stations with their claws bound, their weapons confiscated, their pride shattered. They had come here expecting to fight desperate defenders. Instead, they had encountered something their military training had never prepared them for. An enemy that could destroy them completely, but chose to show mercy instead. Admiral Hana Kim stood in the center of the command bridge, looking small and fragile, surrounded by the massive alien architecture. But every Vorthak in the room watched her with the kind of fear usually reserved for natural disasters. "War Master Gorthak," she said. You and I need to have a conversation about the future. The Vorthak commander was sitting in a chair designed for someone twice his size, his hands bound with human restraints. Even defeated, he was an imposing figure, 7 feet tall, covered in battle scars, with eyes that had seen the destruction of 17 different species. "Human Admiral," he said, his voice still carrying the authority of someone accustomed to command. "I must know. Why did you spare us?" "Because we wanted to send a message," Admiral Kim replied. "But not just to your empire, to the entire galaxy." She gestured to Captain Minho and the other human officers present. "For 200 years, other species have seen us as newcomers to galactic civilization. They think we do not understand how things work out here among the stars. They are wrong. Admiral..." Kim walked to the massive display that showed the disabled Vorthak fleet. "We understand perfectly. The strong prey on the weak. The advanced species dominate the primitive ones. Military might determines political power. These are the rules you all live by." She turned back to face War Master Gorthak. "But humans have different rules. When someone threatens our survival, we do not just defend ourselves. We eliminate the threat so completely that no one else ever makes the same mistake." "Then why," Gorthak asked, "why did you not eliminate us?" "Because," Admiral Kim said simply, "we want other species to understand that we choose mercy from a position of strength, not weakness. Today you learned what human warfare looks like when we are being gentle. Remember that lesson well." The implications of her words were terrifying. Every Vorthak warrior in the room understood that this systematic defeat of their entire fleet was humanity being gentle. They had been completely outmatched by an enemy that was holding back. "What happens now?" asked Gorthak. "Now you go home," Admiral Kim told him. "Your ships will be repaired enough to make the journey back to your empire. Your crews will be released unharmed. You will carry our message to your leaders and to anyone else who might be thinking about threatening human space." She leaned forward slightly, and her voice grew cold. "But understand this clearly, War Master. You will not get this consideration again. If another Vorthak fleet enters human space, if your empire makes any aggressive move toward our worlds, we will respond differently. We will not disable your ships. We will not spare your crews. We will not send messages." The command bridge fell completely silent. "We will simply remove the Vorthak Empire from the galaxy. Permanently." Captain Minho watched the alien warriors as they processed Admiral Kim's words. These were beings bred for warfare, trained from birth to fight and kill. They had conquered 17 species and destroyed countless worlds. But now, they sat in stunned silence, finally understanding what it meant to face an enemy that could extinct them as easily as turning off a light switch. "Admiral," War Master Gorthak said quietly, "my species will want to know how this was possible. How did humans develop such advanced technology so quickly? How did you defeat us so completely?" Admiral Kim smiled, and for the first time since the battle began, it was not a cold smile. It was almost sad. "War Master, you made the same mistake every other species makes when they look at humanity. You saw our short time in space and assumed we were inexperienced. You saw our small numbers and assumed we were weak. You saw our peaceful colonies and assumed we were soft." She walked to one of the massive windows that looked out at the disabled fleet. "But you forgot to ask the most important question about humans. You forgot to ask what we were like before we became a spacefaring civilization. You forgot to ask what kind of species could evolve on a planet where everything was trying to kill everything else for millions of years." The Vorthak warriors looked at each other with growing understanding. They had studied human technology and human ships, but they had never studied human history. They had never asked what kind of creatures could survive on a world where natural disasters, predatory animals, diseases, and climate changes had been constantly testing their survival skills for geological ages. "Earth," Admiral Kim continued, "is what we call a death world. Most species in the galaxy evolved on planets where survival was relatively easy. You developed intelligence to solve social problems, to build better tools, to improve your quality of life. She turned back to face the assembled Vorthak. Humans developed intelligence to survive in an environment that was actively trying to kill us every single day. We learned to think, to plan, to fight, and to adapt, because anything less meant extinction. The command bridge was completely silent as the aliens absorbed this information. So when you threatened to extinct the human race, Admiral Kim concluded, you triggered instincts that were shaped by millions of years of surviving the impossible. You reminded us what we are when we stopped pretending to be civilized. War Master Gorthak stared at the small human woman who had just defeated the pride of his empire without breaking a sweat. For the first time in his life, he truly understood what fear meant. "What are you?" he whispered. Admiral Kim's smile returned, cold and certain. "We are what happens when a death world evolves intelligence, and you just learned why that is something the galaxy should never try to test again." 2 weeks later, the battered Vorthak fleet limped back into their home system. The massive dreadnoughts that had left as symbols of imperial might returned as broken reminders of a lesson learned too late. Word of their defeat spread across the galaxy faster than their damaged ships could travel. But it was not just news of a military defeat. It was the story of how they had been defeated, perfectly, completely, and with a restraint that somehow made it more terrifying than any massacre could have been. War Master Gorthak stood before the Vorthak High Council, the ruling body of an empire that had never known defeat. The council chamber was a massive stone hall filled with the greatest warriors and leaders of his species. War banners from conquered worlds hung from the ceiling. Statues of victorious generals lined the walls. Today, all of that seemed meaningless. "War Master," said High General Vorthak, the eldest member of the council, "explain to us how 3,000 of our finest warships were defeated by 200 primitive human vessels." Gorthak had been dreading this moment for the entire journey home. How could he explain to his people that they had encountered something beyond their understanding? How could he make them believe that humanity had not just beaten them, but had done it while showing mercy? "High General," he began, "we did not lose a battle. We received an education." The council chamber erupted in angry voices. Veteran warriors shouted about honor and revenge. Politicians demanded to know why the fleet had retreated instead of fighting to the death. The idea that the mighty Vorthak Empire had been taught a lesson was impossible for them to accept. "Silence," commanded High General Vorthak. The chamber fell quiet. "War Master, explain what happened." Gorthak activated the holographic display in the center of the chamber. Images from the battle filled the air above the assembled council. But instead of showing glorious combat, the recordings showed Vorthak ships being systematically disabled by an enemy they could barely see. "The humans," Gorthak said, "did not fight like any species we have encountered before. They did not try to defend their homeworld. They did not attempt to minimize their casualties. They did not follow any of the accepted rules of galactic warfare." He paused, knowing that his next words would change everything. "They fought like predators who had already decided that we were going to lose. The only question was whether they would kill us or let us live to carry their message home." "What message?" demanded General Gorthak, a scarred veteran of dozens of campaigns. "That humanity can destroy us any time they choose to do so, that today they chose mercy, and that we will never receive this consideration again." The council chamber fell into stunned silence. For over 1,000 years, the Vorthak Empire had been the dominant military force in the galaxy. The idea that some newcomer species could threaten their existence was beyond their ability to comprehend. "War Master," said High General Vorthak, slowly, "you are telling us that the humans could have destroyed our entire fleet, but chose not to?" "Yes, High General. They disabled every ship, captured every crew member, and did it all without killing a single warrior. Then they repaired our vessels and sent us home to deliver their warning. Another council member stood up. What kind of warning? Gorthak activated another recording. This one showed Admiral Hana Kim standing on the bridge of his own flagship, surrounded by Vorthak warriors who had been defeated without being destroyed. "Leave human space alone," the recording said, "and this is the last time we will be gentle with you." The word gentle hit the council like a physical blow. Every member understood the implications. The systematic defeat of their invasion fleet had been the humans being gentle. "What did you learn about their capabilities?" asked High General Vorthak. Gorthak had hoped to avoid this part of the report, but there was no choice now. "Their technology is far beyond anything we understood. They can control local space-time in ways we cannot explain. They can make their ships invisible to our sensors while positioning them anywhere they choose. And most importantly, they can do all of this while maintaining perfect coordination across their entire fleet." He paused, remembering the horror of watching his mighty armada being picked apart like a training exercise. But their technology is not what makes them dangerous. What makes them dangerous is how they think about warfare itself. "Explain," ordered High General Vorthak. "Every species we have conquered fought to protect something. Their homeworlds, their resources, their way of life. They had objectives, limitations, rules they would not break. This made them predictable." Gorthak activated the final recording, showing the moment when Admiral Kim had smiled before the battle began. "Humans do not fight to protect anything. When they are truly threatened, they fight to ensure their enemy can never threaten anyone again. They have no limitations except the ones they choose to impose on themselves. And today, they chose to impose the limitation of mercy." The implications of this statement echoed through the chamber. The Vorthak Empire had built its power on the predictability of other species. They knew that civilized beings would surrender when facing overwhelming odds. They knew that rational creatures would accept slavery over extinction. But humans, apparently, were neither civilized nor rational when their survival was at stake. "What are your recommendations, War Master?" asked High General Vorthak. Gorthak straightened to his full height. Even defeated, he remained a proud warrior, but pride had to be balanced with wisdom, and wisdom meant accepting reality. "I recommend that the Vorthak Empire never again enter human space. I recommend that we treat humans as we would treat a natural disaster, something to be avoided, not challenged. And I recommend that we spread this message to every other species in the galaxy." "You want us to warn other species about human capabilities? I want us to prevent a galactic war that would end with human victory and everyone else extinct." The council chamber erupted again. The idea of the mighty Vorthak Empire warning others about a threat was humiliating. But War Master Gorthak raised his voice above the chaos. "Listen to me," he commanded. "I have seen what humans are capable of when they decide to stop being gentle. I have watched them dismantle our finest fleet like children taking apart toys. And I have heard their promise about what happens if we force them to stop showing mercy." The chamber fell silent. "Do any of you want to test that promise?" Meanwhile, in the Galactic Council chambers, the same representatives who had spoken of evacuation and surrender 2 weeks earlier now watched the reports with growing amazement. The news from the Vorthak system was spreading across the galaxy, faster than official diplomatic channels could carry it. "Ambassador Park," said the crystalline Z-Light delegate, "I must ask, was this truly humanity's first major interstellar conflict?" Ambassador Juwan Park nodded solemnly. "Our first as a galactic species, yes." "And this Protocol 7 that your admiral mentioned during the battle?" Juwan was quiet for a long moment. He had been briefed on the classified details after the engagement ended, and the knowledge still made him uncomfortable. Protocol 7 is a human military doctrine that other species might find difficult to understand. It states that when our survival is threatened, we do not fight to win battles or capture territory. We fight to ensure that our enemies' descendants We'll learn about the consequences of threatening humanity in their history classes. The Aquari delegate's breathing apparatus wheezed more rapidly. And the Vorthak fleet? That demonstration was humanity being gentle? No, Juwon replied, his voice carrying the weight of human history. That was humanity being patient. We gave them education instead of extinction. We showed them exactly how much mercy they were receiving. The Nephian representative floated, in its gas-filled suit, its voice echoing strangely. What would have happened if they had refused to surrender? Ambassador Park looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives of dozens of species. All of them were waiting for his answer, and all of them were afraid of what it might be. Then you would all be learning about the Vorthak Empire in past tense. From that day forward, human space became the most respected border in the galaxy. Not because of fear alone, though there was plenty of that, but because every species understood that humans had looked into the abyss of total warfare and chosen to step back from it. They had demonstrated that sometimes the most terrifying thing an enemy could do was show you exactly how much mercy you were receiving. And whenever young officers from other species asked their commanders about the humans, they would hear the same story. About the day a human admiral smiled before a battle, and an entire enemy fleet understood that they were already defeated. They just had not known whether they would live to remember it. Admiral Hana Kim retired from active service 6 months later, but her smile became part of galactic legend. It was the expression that meant humanity had moved beyond simple civilization into something new. Something that could choose mercy from a position of absolute strength, and could promise consequences that would echo across generations. The galaxy learned to recognize that smile. And when they saw it, they knew that the conversation was no longer about winning or losing. It was about how much of their civilization they wanted to keep when it was over. In the end, the Vorthak Empire became humanity's first and most loyal allies. Not because they were conquered, but because they understood what conquest would have actually meant. They had seen the face of human warfare when it was restrained by choice rather than necessity, and they never wanted to see what it would look like without that restraint. The galaxy was a safer place now, not because humans had conquered it, but because they had proven they could if they needed to. And everyone understood that the difference between could and would was a choice that humanity made every single day, a choice that depended entirely on how much respect other species showed for human space, human lives, and human patience. The smile had taught the galaxy a lesson that would never be forgotten. When humans decided to go to war, the question was not whether they would win. The question was how much mercy they would show while doing it.